Hello, it's Taylor from Doomed to Fail. Each week, we bring you stories of history's most epic failures and notorious disasters. And this week, we are doing a re release of episode 25, part 2, about Andrew Cunanan and Gianni Versace. They didn't ever really know each other. I mean, they maybe met once, but Andrew Cunanan is an absolute nut job, and he is someone who really thought he belonged in like high society in a weird way, and Johnny Versace's image and look kind of got in the way of that, and he ended up going on a murder spree that's way more complicated than I realized, and it ends in killing Johnny Versace in Miami. Um, since this episode first aired last year, the last podcast on the left, I think they did theirs after ours, and theirs is super good. It's obviously like much longer, so you can always listen to theirs as well. And there's the TV show, the American crime story about it too. So wild story. I remember when it happened. It was really like a totally out of nowhere thing that happened in the news. So learn a little bit more about the seedy underbelly of Miami in this week's re-release episode.
In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Really, really good. I recommend it.
Nice. Very cool. Well, we will transition over to the true crime side of the story. And like I said, I'm going to be partially in Miami, but that's not like the end all be all of where all this originated. It's just where this culminated in the way that it's most famously remembered. Taylor, have you ever been to Miami?
Yes,
What did you think?
it was fine. It was humid. I think I went a leaving spot for a cruise. What's it called? Like a port. I did like a Caribbean cruise. So
Yeah.
I think we drove down to Florida because my friend we're giving her mom's car to her uncle. So we like drove the car to the uncle in Miami, and then we flew home after the cruise.
Nice. Yeah, Port of Miami. That's where basically every major cruise line has a port there.
Yep.
It's very, very cool. You can drive by on the causeway and see all the ships docking.
Yeah,
So
that is cool.
like I mentioned, I lived in Miami, and I'll be honest, I have like a weird love-hate relationship with it because on the one hand, I think that if you're out for a carefree weekend, it's probably one of the best cities in the world to be in. Just do whatever you want. Nobody cares. If money flows easy, do your thing. On the other hand, which was my case, I was a broke college student. I didn't have any money. And then when you see all this opulent display of wealth all around you, you're just like, man, I'm a loser. I have no way to compete against these people rolling around in Lamborghinis.
I remember that picture at your Facebook from like 20 years ago where you're in front of the Lamborghini.
Yeah,
You're wearing like a tank top.
yeah. That was Miami. And one thing that I remember thinking to myself was that I remember going to work at like 8 o'clock in the morning on like the weekdays, and you'd see like the most beautiful people from all around the world just rollerblading around the ocean, and you're just like, what am I doing what am I doing here?
Ugh, totally. That's funny.
And like the conclusion I reached was like, this is not a place that you come to build yourself up. This is a place you come to after you build yourself up. That is a lesson that the main antagonist of this story did not learn. He went to Miami and he made a name for himself there. So any guesses who I might be talking about?
The only thing that I don't know the name, but is it the guy who killed Versace?
Andrew Cunanan.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you got me at he came to Miami with nothing and tried to build himself up there, because that's what I remember from the American crime story.
Yeah, which I'm going to discuss at length here. So today I'm covering Andrew Cunanan. Just going to call him Andrew because that's kind of tough. Who basically is like a very, very emotionally disturbed individual who did a lot of really, really terrible things, and the world is better for him being dead. So I'm going to start with that.
Per usual with the people that are stuck.
Per usual.
There's no love lost in these stories for you. Keep going.
No, not at all. Andrew has been done to death by this point, and I totally get that. But one of the things that I wanted to like focus on in this story was mostly Andrew himself, because really what everybody thinks of is Gianni Versace.
Right.
And the Netflix, okay, so for example, you just mentioned it. There's an amazing Netflix. What's his name? The guy's name Darren Criss plays Andrew Cunanan.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. It is so well made. It's so well done. But even that, do you remember what it was called, Taylor?
Was it? It's not American Crime Story.
So it's called, that is part of the title,
Oh,
yes.
I don't remember the rest of it.
It's called The Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story.
Okay, cool.
So it's all focused around Versace and like less so around all the other stuff that was going on with him, although they do
Mm-hmm.
cover the murders that happened. But really, it's a question like, who is this guy and why did he do the things that he did?
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to kind of fall into. And one of the places I started, I actually went through a pretty in-depth research on the Department of Justice and the FBI's websites on classifications of serial killers versus spree killers, because
Mm-hmm.
Andrew falls into this weird, unique cross section of true crime monsters because he's both. Like he's kind of both. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of sources, like the majority of sources, like I would say like 60% to 40% call him a spree killer, whereas 40% call him a serial killer. He would have cooling off periods, and then he'd have
Mm-hmm.
periods of just rapid succession killing of a bunch of people.
Which is the
So
spree, right?
that's the
So,
spree. The
but if you have
cooling
several
off,
sprees, what are you?
he didn't. He had a spree, a cool off, and then one murder.
Okay.
So he fits the definition of both. So for example, he killed 5 people over the span of 3 months in total.
Wow.
6 days separate murder 1 and murder 2. 1 day separates murder 2 and number 3. 5 separate 3 and murder 4. And nearly 2 months separate 4 and 5.
So random.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
does it mean? Yeah.
Exactly. I'll get to like the 4 and 5 one, because it was like he was just living his life. He was doing his thing in Miami. Like he was having a groovy time. Like, and it was like, what happened? Like, what was the impetus? And nobody knows. And we're gonna make some conjecture here, but nobody's really sure. The other thing I kind of dived into on the FBI's website had to do with he didn't really have the same traits as a killer as a Bundy or a Gacy or a Dahmer, where there was like a sexual impulse behind the killing. He would kill out of opportunity and impulse. So when we talk about serial killers, for example, we talk about product versus process killers. Andrew was neither. He didn't love to kill, which is the process part of a process killer, nor did he kill to collect a body to do whatever they're going to do with, which is the product side of a serial killer that we're most familiar with. That's one distinction on the serial killer side. It actually goes further, and this is where the Department of Justice kicks in around the classifications that go beyond just product and process, which is there's 4 other categories. There's visionary, mission-oriented, hedonistic, and power control-oriented.
Mm-hmm.
As you learn more about Andrew's psyche, power control seems like the classification that makes the most sense when trying to understand what his motivations were.
Do you have examples of the other ones?
So visionary is visionary actually don't. Mission oriented is one I have the best example of, which is like, I'm doing this because God told me to do this. So anytime like someone kills a bunch of prostitutes, it's like, you were sinful, so I had to do this for Jesus. Like that's like the most common one.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say visionary was John List, where he just thought that this was the best thing for his family to kill all of them at once.
Mm-hmm.
Hedonistic is like, you just like it. You just want to do it because
Yeah.
it's just awesome. So the power control piece is the one that fits the bill with Andrew the most, and that was basically getting pleasure out of exerting control over a helpless victim, which he did to one guy really, really badly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like where we kind of wrap up part of like his psyche. Going a little bit further than that, I'm just going to come out and just be a total contrarian and say Andrew was just a total prick. I'm just going to start with it right there.
They always are.
Okay, this is going to be I'm going to get some backlash on this. He reminds me of like every Iranian I grew up with who was just obsessed with like looking amazing and like how they present themselves in the world. And like, you need to know I'm better than you. If you don't know that I'm better than you, then what am I doing? Like, that's exactly the vibe I get off this guy.
Mm-hmm.
It has been said that he's a narcissist, but that was never a clinical diagnosis. And, obviously he's dead, so we're never going to actually know whether that was true or not. It was also said that he had a strong desire to be the center of attention. Chris Darren actually portrayed him exactly as I read about him, which was just the guy's dressed to the nine and talk about how amazing his life is. I wrote down that if he was alive right now, he would be an Instagram influencer who'd be buying followers from overseas click farms. Like, that's the guy we're talking about.
He sounds like an incel, like Andrew Tate, like someone who's like...
He's gay and he got a lot of play.
Fine.
Yeah.
He can be incel vibes, but that's fine too.
It's not that. It's a need to belong. It's a need to be the biggest, greatest, flashiest star out there. That's where this is right from. And incels like just a shut in, right? They're like nerdy shut-ins who
Yeah.
can't get out and hang with people. Like that's not what this is. This guy actually was a little bit too out there hanging out with people. Because he actually, we'll learn later, he legitimately met Gianni Versace, like organically.
Right.
Like he was in that crowd to where he could do stuff like that. So like I literally just mentioned, Andrew came out as gay in high school, which obviously, good for him. That couldn't have been easy back when this would have been like the late 1980s. And this was obviously not an easy choice because his mom and him got into a really, really serious fight. It got physical. Andrew basically assaulted her at one point.
Gosh.
And he ended up moving out. Like he left his family home and moved out and settled in San Francisco in the Castro district. I alluded to this just now, which he had a knack for befriending wealthy older gay men, which I'm going to go with like red flag number one for the older gay men, because it was never to their benefit that he was friends with them, really. Andrew was basically using these men and leveraging their wealth to live up to his own self-image of himself, which again, if you haven't seen the Versace story on Netflix, Darren Chris plays this guy incredibly well. And that was basically his thing. Make friends with whoever had the resources and use them up and then ditch them, move on to the next guy. In 1990, many, 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 many years before what ends up happening, Andrew actually does meet Gianni Versace, which I'm going to do a little bit of a dive into like who he was. I know he's been done to death, but what the hell, we're here already. Versace was a fashion designer who created the luxury brand Versace in 1978. It became a brand for celebrities because it was like a red carpet thing. Do you remember J-Lo's green dress?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was Versace. The first big one of these was Elizabeth Hurley wearing like some like really sexy black dress at the Academy Awards, and that was so it just kind of popped off with celebrities, and when it pops off with celebrities, it pops off with everybody who's trying to be a celebrity.
Yeah.
It expanded really quickly into 1,500 stores. Eventually, long after Johnny's death, it was sold off to Michael Kors Company, who is the current owner of the brand. So I wrote down here that like Gianni Versace, and if you've never seen a picture of this guy, go take a gander, because this guy was exactly everything Andrew was faking being.
Yeah.
An uber successful, incredibly wealthy, world-renowned artist, designer, celebrity, and he was gay. Which, like, when you look at it from like your archetype, like, what can I be in this world? Like, that's who you want to be if you're someone like Andrew. It was, I thought it was potentially part of the reason why what ends up happening is because he was trying to basically destroy the thing that he could never achieve himself, is what I think personally.
Yeah.
In 1990, again, 7 years before all of this went down, apparently Versace was in San Francisco and met Andrew. Andrew would have been 21 years old this time. And in the Netflix series, this is not true. In the Netflix series, it's like super played up how they were like playing cat and mouse and playing coy with each other. Like it was like a lovers thing. Like they went out to dinner in the movie. Like none of that happened. Like that's what Andrew told people happened, but the people who were actually there said that's not exactly what happened. Apparently, there was a split moment where they were passing each other. Versace seemed to recognize him and asked if he knew him from a party at his Lake Como estate. And Andrew said, "Thanks for remembering me." And then
He was never there, for sure.
So yeah, I was like, dude, what is a Versace party like? Like, how many drugs are being just passed
I was gonna
around?
say,
Like,
I don't know. I just can't imagine that much cocaine in one spot.
yeah, exactly. It's like Versace's like, he just looked like a generic guy, and it's like, oh, maybe I know you from this. Maybe he was hitting on. Who knows? But like, it definitely was. Like, he definitely wasn't there. It could have just been like a random thing to like play out. Like, look, if I had a Lake Como house, I would also be asking random girls if I recognize them for my Lake Como estate party.
100%. I was gonna say on both sides, you could be like, yeah, I was there. Also be like, oh, hey, were you at that like wonderful, beautiful, lavish party that I have all the time?
George Clooney was there. Remember him? He was there.
He's
Brad
always there.
Pitt. We did.
He's at every Lake Como party.
Yeah. We do pranks because he's there with us all the time. So by early 1997, Andrew had a few on-again, off-again relationships and had begun using meth and alcohol quite frequently. By this point, it was kind of becoming known in the San Francisco gay scene that Andrew was kind of a shithead. He had apparently maxed out credit cards for a couple of these wealthy guys and was basically just supporting himself in between other rich men by just selling drugs, basically. And he was just a grifter in general. At this time, we're going to introduce two men who become key figures at the start of Andrew's murder spree. One is David Mattson, who Andrew would later call the love of his life and who lived in Minneapolis. The other is Jeffrey Trail, who also lived in Minneapolis and had some involvement with Mattson that Andrew did not like. They were obviously gay as well. They're in the same gay scene, basically.
Right.
Andrew flew to Minneapolis on April 24th to stay with Mattson and hang out with Trail at some point. It sounds like Trail really didn't want Andrew there. From everything I read about this, it seems like Andrew was one of those guys where like you had to be super stern when you set boundaries with them. Otherwise, they're just like habitual line steppers.
Mm-hmm.
Trail even told people that he really needed to have a serious conversation with Andrew and that Andrew kind of scared him. And part of the reason why Andrew scared him was because Trail was one of the people in the San Francisco gay scene that was telling everyone, this guy's a grifter. He's trying to steal your shit. Like that's all he's in for on this. And
totally.
News of that apparently got back to Andrew that Trail had done this. Andrew had grown obsessed that Trail was also in a relationship with Mattson, who, like I mentioned, he called the love of his life. And this freaked Trail out because Andrew's a meth addicted alcoholic at this point. So
Yeah.
not great. On April 26th, so 2 days after he's in Minneapolis, he's been staying at Mattson's house. Andrew tells Trail to come to Mattson's apartment because on an earlier visit that Andrew had gone to Trail's house for, he had stolen his gun and he wants to give it back to Trail. Red flag number 2.
That is like okay, I know that I don't like guns. That's like another reason not to have a gun is like someone could steal your gun and no one's gonna hand you back your stolen gun.
Okay, yeah, Taylor, like that. So exactly, so like that's why I put red flag number 2. If your gun is ever stolen, the only way to deal with that is to call the police and tell them the serial number of that gun. And if you know where it is, tell them they go get it. You don't go get it.
You don't go get it. No. You don't meet that guy in a parking lot to have him give it back to you. No.
No, it's like what's the logical, like, why would you steal? It's like you stole it for a good reason. Nobody steals a gun for a good reason. They steal it to wipe the serial numbers off and to go kill a homeless man. Like, that's all you do with a stolen gun. Trail goes to this apartment, and as we see in the Netflix show, very accurately portrayed, Andrew beats him to death with a hammer in front of Mattson. This was an impulse thing. This was not like a calculated, deliberate serial killer. This was like he just pissed him off and just like he grabbed the first thing in front of him and just bashed his skull in. And Mattson was there to see the whole thing, much to his bad luck. I think at this point, my take on this and Netflix's take on this was that Mattson was basically scared shitless. He was like, I don't know what to do. This guy's unhinged. Like, this guy's out of his mind. He's drunk as shit. He's high as fuck. Like, I don't know what to do. He just killed the guy with a hammer in front of my house. And he helped him roll Trail's body up in a rug that they then put behind the sofa.
So that's, I feel like when you were like in the past episodes, you've been like, would you help someone hide a body? You know? But I feel like this is the case where I'd be like so scared of this person that I just saw kill someone. I wouldn't be like, excuse me, I'm gonna call the police. You know, I feel like there's definitely a chance I'd be like, cool. Let's roll up his body. You know, like you don't want to die. So
hey, I'm in this with you, man. I'm in this with you. We're gonna be fine. Yeah. Let's roll this body up together. Let's chop it up. You want to chop it up? We can chop it up. I got a hacksaw. Yeah. You do not want to confront a guy in your house in this state.
No.
Mattson stopped going to work because he just witnessed a man get beat to death in his kitchen with a hammer. So that raises some alarm bells. And a coworker decided to go to Mattson's house and check on him. And at which point he finds Trail's body. At that point, Andrew and Mattson already hit the road. And they had taken Mattson's Jeep to flee the scene, essentially. So for several days, police try to find the two of them. And basically, there's a bunch of leads coming in. People saw them here. They had dinner at this place, whatever. They would see them all over the place. They didn't catch them completely because on May 3rd, Mattson's body was found near Rush City, which is about an hour north of Minneapolis. Andrew had shot him with a gun he stole from Trail and thrown his body out of the car. So that's murder number 2. Which, like, okay, there's no cell phones. Like, maybe when you're at a diner, you just run away. I don't know what you do. Can't really blame that guy.
I mean, we already like we know about it. So like something happened.
Yeah. The same day that police find Mattson's body, Andrew arrives in Chicago in the now stolen Jeep. And he arrives at the home of Lee Miglin, I think. Miglin.
Okay.
Lee's a really curious one. Again, there's some conflict here between what Netflix says and what people think. But basically, Lee was a super rich real estate tycoon. He had a net worth of $50 million at the time that he died.
Whoa.
And again, Lee was like a 72-year-old married man of 40 years with two kids. Nobody knows why Andrew went to this guy's house. There's no evidence of why he would have pinpointed this house to actually drive to and knock on the door. There was no forced entry. There was none of that. Lee's family finds it really, really insulting that people suggest they knew each other, because the assumption is that Lee was living a secret life, doing gay things on the side of being like this real estate tycoon executive. Netflix made the editorial decision that they for sure had a relationship. They had a relationship. That's the reason why Andrew knocked on that guy's door that night. The one indication that this wasn't kind of like a run-of-the-mill murder for Andrew was the way he killed him. So again, you have a beating to death with a hammer. You have a shot to death in the back of the head. In this case, he tied up Lee's legs and arms, and his body was wrapped in tape and plastic. His ribs had been completely broken, and he'd been stabbed either 40 or 20 times, depending on the source that you look at, in his chest. Ultimately, he was killed because Andrew took a hacksaw to his throat, like almost decapitating him.
Oh, you didn't know him?
So that's the thing. It's like, why would you do something that insane to a total stranger? That's why people are like, we think he knows him, but we're not sure. There were some stories that were told where Andrew had told people that he knew a rich family in Chicago whose kid was named Duke, and Lee has a kid named Duke. And so people are like, how would they have even mixed? And the family themselves, like, the only way they could have mixed would have been a gay bond, a gay relationship. And and to them, they're like, of course that's not the case. Our dad was like, married to my mom, and like, who knows?
How would he have met? Like, that's so weird.
Yeah.
I don't even know. This makes sense. Okay.
So Andrew ditches the Jeep, Madsen's Jeep, outside of Lee's house, and steals his Lexus. And at this point, Andrew gets put on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. So 6 days later, Andrew would shoot a guy named William Reese. He managed a cemetery. He just went up to him and shot him in the back of the head. And he stole the stolen Jeep was found outside of Lee's house, so he needed another car. He ended up stealing William Reese's vehicle, some red Chevy truck or something. This was on May 9th that he did this. So he only killed him for the truck. There was no connection. There was no stealing of money or anything like that. It was just for the truck. Using Reese's vehicle, Andrew drove to Miami, Florida, and rented a hotel room. He basically just lived in Miami for about 2 months, out in the open, despite being on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. Again, Miami's a great place to escape. Everybody's running away from something.
That's true. No one really gives a shit.
Yeah. In 1992, Gianni Versace had purchased a mansion called Casa Casuarina. I think I nailed that. It is now more commonly known as the Versace Mansion. It is located on the main drag of South Beach, which is called Ocean Drive. Only because I knew you would ask this, Taylor, I did Zillow it.
Oh, you did?
And it's expensive. So the current estimated value is $36 million.
What was it? Wait, what's the address again?
Yep, wrote that down too. It's 1116 Ocean Drive.
Okay, Miami Beach, right?
Yep.
So I do want to tell you that when I was looking this up, are you going to get to the fact that 2 men were murdered in a murder-suicide there in 2021?
What? No.
I just linked to. I found a Vanity Fair article called 2 Men Found Dead in the Versace Mansion. It said police are still investigating. This was from July 15th, 2021, but it was a day ahead of the 25th anniversary or the 24th anniversary of Versace's murder. There were 2 men, 31-year-old Adam Rashup of Randolph, New Jersey, and 30-year-old Alexander Gross of York, Pennsylvania, were found dead by gunshot wounds. So I don't know if it said potentially murder-suicide, potentially double suicide, but lots of ghosts in that house.
Yeah, I mean, it's
$1 million house.
It is. Look at the pictures of this thing. Like, I was trying to put it into ways that I could describe it, and really the only way I could describe it is if you've ever seen like Versace's style of clothing that he designed, the house just looks like Versace's house.
Exactly. Like, the only way you'd be like, oh, it looks like, oh wow, it has like a big open courtyard in the middle.
Yeah, like your eyes don't even know where to look. There's gold trim, there's detailed tile mosaics. If you look at the pool, that's called the million mosaic pool because there's literally a million tiles being used to create the mosaic. There's columns, statues, pools. It's just opulent in a way that would be super distasteful if anybody but a fashion designer lived there. It would be distasteful.
Wow. It's a lot.
So I'm going to start with red flag number three, and red flag number three is the mansion itself. I've never been inside the mansion when I was living in Miami, but it's almost impossible to be in Miami and not drive or walk by it.
Mm,
Ocean Drive, the street that it's on, is where all the restaurants and bars of South Beach are on, and a lot of the clubs. It is the street closest to the most beautiful white sand beaches Florida has to offer. To drive the point home of how publicly located this mansion is, if you street view the address, again, 116 Ocean Drive, you won't see the house. Do you know why you won't see the house, Taylor?
because of offense?
Because there is a giant Miami tour bus stopped in bumper to bumper traffic, blocking the Google Maps car from taking a picture of the house. That's how packed this thing is, and that's how not private this thing was.
Someone listed they initially listed the house for sale for $125 million when the first and ended up selling for $41 million. So they really overestimated the amount of money that they're putting for sale for this house. It also is, I love also a thing about Zillow that I love is they do the rent zestimate. The rent zestimate is $196,000 a month.
Sounds about right. So right now, Taylor, it's actually a hotel, and it is it got converted into so it has a really rich history. If you look at the house was created by an heir to the Standard Oil fortune, and then transitioned into a hotel. Then Versace bought it and converted it back to a house. Then it went back to a hotel. Then it got conveyed again at $41 million, which is what you're reading there.
Oh, I see.
And
So it's the Villa Casarina now.
yeah, I think they're trying to. Everybody knows the history. They don't need to rub it in with like calling it the Versace mansion, you know.
We
But it's
should
not.
stay there and then also at Lizzie Borden's house.
So like, I was actually kind of surprised. Like, okay, $900 a night is a lot, but it's on a Friday, Saturday in Miami, directly across. Like, that's as much as a Fountain in Miami would be, and you're staying in like the most pristine property in the city. So I don't know. I don't know. Price wise, I thought it was like actually fairly reasonable for what it was. Going back to the red flag. So what I'm saying is that if you are a certain social class that the entire world wishes they were a part of, just be a little bit more elusive than literally having the most obvious home in the world and in the most public place in the world.
Yeah, I
So
get it.
so for some reason that nobody can really make sense of, on July 15th, 1997, Versace walked from his front door to a newsstand, and on his way back at 8:45 a.m., he is very, very publicly shot in the head by Andrew at the entrance of his house. Again, no clue why that was the day, that was the time, again, he was living his life in Miami, like doing his thing.
That's why I don't get up before 9. I hate the mornings.
That's a good
They're
point.
dangerous.
Yeah,
Don't do
you're
it.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
What's weird is that every other murder, he tries to evade things, right? Like he steals the car, he goes to a different city, he does whatever. And he, like I say, just mostly living a normal life in Miami. So like, why this guy? Why at this time? It's so elusive. Obviously, at this point, Versace died immediately, and the public, because it was so public, people gave chase to Andrew. Police were immediately in the area, and a manhunt began. They called it the biggest manhunt in American history at that time, but we don't. I don't know. I didn't go through and Google if that was accurate or not. The day after the murder, a boat owner at a marina nearby in South Beach called the police and said somebody had broken into a boat at the marina, like a next door boat or something. Police really didn't care. They didn't really show up. They didn't really think that much of it. It wasn't until a week later, so on July 23rd, when houseboat sitters, so basically people who check on boats when the owners aren't using them,
Hmm.
visited a boat and found the door was open and it looked like somebody had been living there. Though the caretaker at that point knew that the actual owners of the houseboat hadn't been there since December of the previous year. So the caretaker then recalls hearing a gunshot from one of the rooms, leaves and calls the police. The police and the FBI descend on this thing. They start trying to talk to Andrew. They're like trying to convince him to come out. If I remember correctly, it said this was like a standoff that lasted 8 hours. Andrew was already dead. Andrew
Ugh.
killed himself when they walked in. Like there's nobody to talk to, and they just were like not wanting to go inside and get blasted. So he shot himself in the head, obviously. But the question around like why he ended up choosing. Okay, the first kill, pure rage impulse. Second kill, I gotta get rid of the witness. Third kill, I need money, I need resources. I'm gonna go to this guy's house. Fourth kill, I need a car. I'm gonna steal his car. This one's the one where it's just like I think it was literally just he was just a loser who envied people that he could not be, and Johnny Versace was the highest personification of like what he could never be.
Yeah,
Some
that's
people
awful.
thought it had to do with HIV status. So Johnny Versace, or well, he did have HIV, but that's not the relevant part. The relevant part is that people had mentioned that Andrew thought that he had HIV and
Hmm.
that he had said he's going to take out his revenge on older men who like do this to younger men.
Hmm.
And there was like some thought he was autopsy. He didn't have HIV, but people were like, no, he thought he did. Like he never got tested, but he thought he had HIV. So like maybe that was a piece of this too. I don't know.
That's like, I mean, that's like, I don't know what you're saying before, but people killing sex workers because they gave them an STD, and it's like there's two involved in that tango, my friend.
Well, yeah,
It's not
none of
robots.
nothing about his psyche actually follows logic. One thing that I read, it reminded me a lot of actually John Lennon about
Hmm.
Mark David Chapman because it was just like just another nothing nobody loser who needs to take down somebody who's creating it in the world because there was something
Yeah.
saying it's easier to what is that saying? Those who cannot build seek to destroy,
Mm.
and that's kind of
The only one
how
I really know is when in the wedding planner when Jennifer Lopez says, "Those who can't wed, plan."
that is actually a pretty good line.
That's my number one of those that I remember.
Hey, two J-Lo references in our Andrew Cunanan episode. So, and then largely this ended up getting forgotten because one of the attendees at Johnny's funeral died like less than a month after this happened. You know who that is?
No.
Princess Diana.
She went to the funeral? No way.
Yeah, she went to the funeral and
Man,
it
the
was
90s were
like,
wild.
dude, it was like a week or two after that is when she died.
I
And
remember
then
I was at my friend Julie's house eating pizza and I was so sad.
I remember too. I was with my parents. We did our little summer trip to Vail, or it wasn't even summer, but
Oh my God.
so yeah, that was a wild month. But because of that, so much of this got like just it sunk. Like people stopped paying so much attention to this because then Princess Diana was a big story. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's our story around Andrew Cunanan.
What a tragedy. That's just so like that your life can be taken away by like any random crazy person in like
Yeah,
2 seconds. Like you didn't do anything like for that specific thing to happen to you. It just happens because you're like in the right place. Or like if he hadn't like gone and gotten the paper, or like hadn't hard slept past 9 like you should, you know?
yeah, yeah,
It's just so many things that it could like little things that lead up to it and make that happen.
yeah. Just living
Ugh,
your
what an
life, built
asshole.
some
Yeah.
awesome life, the coolest house, the best every like, and then some random idiot just can just shoot you in the head.
You're just like covered in gold and like, I don't know. Man.
He was effortlessly cool. I will say, Gianni Versace, when you look at his pictures, you're like, damn,
Hmm.
like that is a world famous designer. Like you can just,
Yeah.
he's got an air about him.
I can't, yeah. I mean, and his sister's still alive, still doing Versace things, I guess, even though he said Michael Kors bought it.
So she is still the creative director. Donatella Versace is still the creative director, and the vast majority of Gianni's estate actually was bequeathed to his niece, Allegra Versace, who is Donatella's daughter.
Oh,
Yeah, it's estimated her net worth right now is about $800 million, and she's
nice.
36 years old.
Nice. Yeah, well, when my sister had her baby, my brother Kincaid, who is gay and not going to have children, was like, now my estate is divided into three because he's dividing his estate amongst his nieces and nephews. That's the dream. You got to have that a rich person in your family leave you something.
Dude, if you look at the guy who played Gianni Versace, it is like
It's real
crazy.
good. Yeah,
He nailed. I mean, you
he
look at the side
nailed
by
it.
side. Wow.
I found a picture of, whoa, I heard that dog. She okay? Is she upset that she's
Yes.
getting a sibling, a
She doesn't know
foster
she's getting a
sibling?
sibling yet. I haven't told her.
Uh-oh. It's gonna divide up your estate
Nice states.
too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So many Medusa head medallions.
Oh yeah, so many. It's so like black with gold on top of it is my picture of
It's
it.
just decadence, opulence. It's like just yeah.
Donatella Versace's husband's really cute.
Yeah, I would imagine she could attract a fairly attractive person. There's something there's something to
Being,
international fame
being
and
super rich.
obscene wealth that weirdly draws people to you. I don't really get it.
What is it?
I don't know.
What could it be? What is that mystery? Not mysterious, they're just rich. They're
So
richer than you.
that's our stories. Taylor, is there anything you want to sign off with? I know it's almost 6 and you have to go to a baseball game.
Yeah, I have to be there at 5:45. I'd be there in 2 hours. It's in Palm Springs. So yes, I do have to go because I have to get ready and find a baseball for the players to sign for the children, like you
I
do.
forgot that we're not on the same time zone.
No, it's almost 4, but still, I need to get ready. But yeah, no, if this is your first time listening, thank you. We have social media at Doomed to Fail Pod on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and we're also doomed to fail pod at gmail.com. If you have any feedback or suggestions, we're looking for historical, true crime, relationships with red flags, tragedies with red flags, things that could have been avoided, or just some crazy ass stories from the past. We'd love to hear it because I think, like I said before, there's so many cool stories. There's so much we don't know. There's so much that we can all learn from the past and share with each other. So I'd love to tell more.
Love it. Awesome. Thanks everyone. Thanks, Taylor.
Thank you.
Bye all.